So our next presentation is from, I should be turning it over to Brother Tim Bridges.
I think you turn it over to William.
William.
Mr. William Battle.
Yeah, that's right. William Battle. Go ahead, Brother Battle.
Oh, great. Dr. Gaskin, I'm hurt. I am truly hurt, man. I'm truly hurt. But thank you so much. Let's start by acknowledging Dr. Norris, because Dr. Norris, I am just at awe at the information you shared. Awesome contrast between race and racism, and that structural racism, man, I am so reminded of a recent incident that I encountered. However, I won't elaborate on that because my task today is to introduce the community panel. But on the other hand, you kind of struck some chords with me with some of that information that you brought on board with structural racism. I'll just leave it at that. But thank you very kindly for your talk, and it was extremely uplifting. I also want to acknowledge Dr. Folks and the young, because they were extremely uplifting. And so thank you very kindly for that message. And then of course, Dr. Gaskins, we came past the pot, man. But certainly with that message, that introduction, that opening that you brought on, we can't pass the pot to the preacher. But if you get me your Cash App sign, I'll see what I can do in trying to make sure we get that preacher compensated, because that was powerful. I really appreciate that, really awesome. But enough about that. My name is William Battle. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Community Engagement Dissemination Corps at Johns Hopkins Center to Reduce Health Solutions. And I want to give many thanks to the Symposium Planning Committee and the Community Engagement Corps team for, just giving me this opportunity to serve. I am currently an adjunct professor, just a little bit about me, adjunct professor at Bowie State University out of the College of Education, where I interact with students about various health issues that impact us today. I place emphasis on nutrition, mental and emotional health, human sexuality, drugs, and physical fitness. I'm also the co-founder, president and founder of a nonprofit, Emmanuel Health Education Incorporated, that's located in Prince George's County, and we provide an array of health messages for men with a specific focus on prostate cancer. And we're currently working on research and education in Maryland and in Eastern North Carolina. Then lastly, I'm also a founding member. It's called a coalition. It's called the Prostate Cancer Awareness Alliance. That covers the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia. And our focus, again, is on prostate cancer and understanding prostate health through shared experiences. So today, I'm tasked with introducing the community panel. And unlike the actual topic, earlier session, we wanted to engage in a topic relative to the community panel. And Dr. Norris did such a phenomenal job contrasting between racism. But our topic focuses on racism, and wretchedness, researcher versus resident. Dr. Norris covered that, the first two, racism, pretty good. So we interjected our own little verb, noun, or adjective, wretchedness, and I want to expound on that. However, we do know that Dr. Tati Warren, our moderator, will do a masterful, phenomenal job defining it, explaining it, and keeping it within the context of our conversation. And so with that being said, our first panel, I'm a Southern guy, so ladies go first. My first panel I'm going to introduce is Dr. Phyllis Slade Martin. She's an independent historian and the owner of Slade's Associates, LLC, where they involved in research and education, organization consulting. On the community note, Ms. Slade has extensive experience conducting health education and outreach activities. She has worked on numerous community-based health research programs and projects in Prince George's County, and she has served on a project management for the Johns Hopkins Center to Reduce Disparities Coach Project for community ministries of Prince George's County. In that capacity, she was presenting health education information to over hundreds of Prince George's County seniors, and she trained selected members, individuals termed as coaches to navigate, family members through healthcare, through the healthcare system. Ms. Slade Martin is also a member of the community ministry, Prince George's County Cancer Advisory Group. Our next panelist is Mr. Ron Miner. He's the executive producer of Veterans in Transition, television and events platform for veterans to share their stories of service to their country and highlight their products and services offered in the marketplace through business, government, nonprofits, and philanthropy. Mr. Miner is also a board member of the newly formed Prostate Cancer Awareness Alliance. And again, our mission is to help men to be proactive about understanding prostate health. Our third panelist is Mr. Tim Bridges. Lord have mercy. Mr. Bridges is the vice president of the Fave Street Outreach Project. It's a community that was created organization that was created in 1994 by a group of people who at that time were fed up with the drugs and the sanitation problems that plague their community in Southwest Baltimore. The project mission is to build a better, safe, and healthier community for our residents, build a brighter future for our youth, and work towards a better tomorrow for our neighborhood. Mr. Bridges, having lived, worked, played, and worshiped in his community over 40 years, attributed his feelings of community to loving and helping others by him observing his mother, who was a African-American woman who owned a grocery store, who provided a service for over 40 years to a community. And that was in this environment that he learned firsthand the community having the capacity of empowering itself and the reciprocation of giving to his community and to others. And over the years, he spearheaded several community events engaging children and seniors. He's partnered with a host of local government entities and worked with state delegates to secure funding for the Fade Street Community Center, which I will add, by the way, is the only community center in West Baltimore solely owned and operated by its community members. Mr. Bridges is currently employed by the Bun Scores Housing Development, where he feels it's a great privilege to serve seniors and others and their family residents. And lastly, but not least, we have our own Dr. Tati Warren, of course, moderator. Dr. Tati, most affectionately known as Dr. Tati, is a social behavior scientist with nearly 2 decades of fostering strong partnerships and responsible investments in communities globally. Dr. Tati is the president and CEO of Just Tati. Just Tati, the acronyms meaning teacher, author, trainer, and innovator. Just Tati was founded in March of 2015 with its primary mission to end needless suffering to underserved individuals and build healthy communities globally. Just Tati exists to help provide resources to individuals or families in need and ensure that resources, be it physical, financial, emotional, mental, or spiritual, are appropriate and sustainable. Dr. Tati's combined experience specializing in community engagement and maintaining quality social impact measures was the impetus for launching her Wine, Wings, and Wisdom in 2019. And since such time, the COVID pandemic and global lockdown of 2020, Wine, Wings, and Wisdom has become a virtual monthly serving series using local knowledge to inform global wisdom, reaching attendees from 5 continents, 13 countries, 23 states, and countless cities and counties worldwide. Dr. Tati is a global connector and convener who successfully navigates high impact partnerships that deliver win-win-win outcomes for all. Her training, coupled with her faith in Jesus, has equipped her with the building blocks to incorporate public health approaches in promoting healthy lifestyles holistically, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. She currently serves as the board chair for the Tasha Hastings Foundation, and co-leads the Community Engagement and Dissemination Core at Johns Hopkins Center for Health Disparities. So again, I welcome everyone. Dr. Tati, I yield you the floor.
Thank you so much for those lovely introductions, Mr. Battle. We are excited to jump right in. I've not only been tasked with moderating our session today, and you definitely heard that title correct. You read it correctly as well. We are talking about race, racism, and ratchetness, researchers versus residents. So I hope that you will hold onto your seats tight. We're going to have fun. That is the intent of this segment, and we are excited that we get to do this again. Yes. So one, Dr. Norris, I just thank you because you did an awesome job describing for us race and racism in our research, in training, and public health practice. And we thank you, Dr. Norris, for your remarks, also being a part of the community conversations. One of the things that you said in the presentation was, what's a way forward, or what's the way forward? And we thank you for reaffirming, the importance of community engaged and community-led grassroots research initiatives. As the Community Engagement Dissemination Core, I have the beauty of course, serving alongside William, but also co-leading with Colonel Jimmy Slade and Dr. Janice Bowie. And one of our primary missions in the center is to ensure that our scholars remain competent, like you said, and sensitive to the issues that are around them. Not only the issues that are around them in their global environments or physical environments, but also the issues that are around them in their social environments. So we are going to jump right in, and there are 3 things that I've asked folks to do. And I've asked our panel, Dr. Slade Martin, Mr. Bridges, and Mr. Minor, to give us 10 words that describe them. Will did a phenomenal job reading those bios, and we know bios can get pretty lengthy and very long, and they have accomplished certainly a lot. But when it boils down, what is the legacy that they will leave for their community? So if we can spotlight Dr. Phyllis Slade Martin, and of course, ladies first. So Dr. Slade Martin, what are your 10 words that describe you?
First, just thank you, Tati, and the committee for having me. I love this conference. And as a historian, it was hard for me to do 10. You really want me to just do 10 words, okay? So I have independent historian, 1 word, listener, traveler, reader, passionate about African-American storytelling, that's 1 word, educator, activist, small business owner, Christian, and mother.
Thank you, Dr. Slade Martin. And it's not the historian, it's the historian mixed in with them PhD letters on the back, giving us a dissertation. But yes, Dr. Slade Martin, thank you so much. Again, independent historian, listener, traveler, reader, value storytelling, educator, activist, small business owner, Christian, and mother. That is Dr. Phyllis Slade Martin. And then we have Tim Bridges, who also reigns from West Baltimore, zip code 21223. I know many are tuning in not only from the state of Maryland, but just nationwide as well as global. Definitely share with us in the chat where you're tuning in from, just so we can stay engaged, because that's what community folks do, okay? So Mr. Tim Bridges, I asked you the same question.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just want to say thank you all again, and thanks for being allowed to be here. I just want to say, my 10 words, respectful, trustworthy, hard worker, father, husband, grandfather, sensitive, caring, dependable, and compassionate.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tim Bridges. And we love that blue.
Thank you.
It looks good on you. So, Mr. Rodney Minor, I am passing the mic to you, sir. and I asked you the same questions. What 10 words describe you?
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for being here and this opportunity to be part of this panel. I really look forward to it. My 10 words: husband, striver, father, thriver, entrepreneur, advocate, child, champion, creative, and survivor. Those are my words.
Thank you so much. So, as you heard, both Mr. Minor, Mr. Bridges, and Dr. Slade Martin tried to describe themselves in 10 words, okay? They tried to describe themselves in 10 words, and they are so much more than that. I had an opportunity in preparing for this symposium to do one-on-ones with them. We, of course, did a run of shows, just simple meet and greets, you know? And it has just truly been wonderful and been an honor getting to know them as a part of this conversation today. And I know everyone is trying to figure out, where are they going with this? Where are you going with this, team? Where are you going with this, Tim Bridges? Where are you going with this, Rodney Minor? Where are you going with this, Phyllis Slade Martin? Where are you going with this, Dr. Tati? Well, ratchetness in the urban community means two things. It can mean two things simultaneously. So to set the context for our conversation, we know that the term ratchet, which comes from wretched in terms of the denotation, is a slang term, and it can mean exciting or excellent. And it's often used as a term of endearment or empowerment. But some may also use ratchet for when they are feeling bad in some way. So this one word in the context of a community can have two opposing ideas, bad and good. And then we talking about researchers versus residents. So when we came together again in planning for this, and we talked about what it meant to be a member of the community. And oftentimes we hear researchers in their practice saying, oh, I'm going to go into the community, or I'm going to the community, as if to say you are not a person in that community. Well, folks, I'm here to tell you and also challenge you that if you work, live, play, shop, worship, go to the grocery store in a community, that you are, in fact, a member of that community. And you should be always willing to think about how you can improve or enhance that geographical location and the community. I think all of our members were also in agreement with that. And we're going to jump right in. When I think about community, and especially Baltimore, Maryland community, and if we want to even get more specific, right? I think of West Baltimore, and I think of Tim Bridges, Mr. Community Man. So I'm passing the mic to you, sir. So we are talking about race and racism in our research practice. And we know, again, serving as the Vice President of Fayette Street Outreach, that you have been involved over the last 30 years, actively involved in research with many institutions, both healthcare systems, academic institutions, faith-based organizations. And so it has looked very different. And we know that there has been successes and challenges, but can you share with us, Tim Bridges, from your viewpoint, how do you feel about the topic that we're discussing on today?
So again, so I want to back up a little bit, and I just want to say to the heroes of West Baltimore, like a Dr. Folks. I met Dr. Folks back in, I think, 96. And I'll tell you about faith and God, how it works. Dr. Folks was teaching high school and a high school in Baltimore City. And so she starts seeing 10th, 11th graders couldn't read. So she's like, oh, well, you should be able to read this. You should be able to do this. And they couldn't comprehend. So what I like about people, Black people are resilient. She said she's gonna leave that situation because it was hard to change it, because we have a history of children being pushed ahead and really not having people take time with them. So this woman, she left her high school teaching job and came to West Baltimore, her and her husband. And they were able to purchase an old printing company. And I believe it was built in 1940. I think it's around 23,730 square feet. And so that was Dr. Folks. And when I went there and I met her, and the funny thing about engagement is that I would go by there and they didn't have anything, but they had faith. She had determined in her mind, her and her husband, that they would build this educational learning institute for these children. And she did it. And so those are the real heroes. And again, my name is Tim Bridges. I serve as the Vice President of State Street Outreach Community Association. And I serve with a wonderful group of people. Ms. Edna Mans Lake is our president. Mr. Sterling Brunson is our treasurer. Mr. Andre Lake is our secretary. And I also serve on the State Central Committee for Baltimore City 44A. And I'd like to thank my wonderful chair, Ms. Corinthia Barber, and Delegate Keith Haynes, because you say I mentioned all these people because in West Baltimore, if you look at our population, we're probably about 3,714 within our boundaries. And within that footprint, 3,841 people, 96% are African Americans, 3% are white, and 1% Latino. So when we talk about engagement and we look at our communities, it takes these people that help shape how we determine how we can move forward. And Brother William shared with me, and he's not going to share it, but when you're talking about disparities in healthcare, Brother William recently had to go and had some medical issues, and he just got passed through like I'm passing this bottle and sent home. Dr. Folks in the emergency room with her mother, 10.5 hours before they could see a doctor. Why is that? Why do we have to endure that? And so one thing that I thought about, and I said to myself, I don't know if you all ever been to a VIP suite down at M&T Stadium. They call them the box seats, skybox. And so when you get a RSVP, and that's how I equate institutional racism, it's like having a VIP card to the skybox. When you get to the skybox, everything is there. All types of top shelf liquor, all the chilled drinks that you could ever want. They have a chef outside the door, buffet, shrimp, crab cakes, everything that you want. And then I equate going to the regular seat. You pay for a ticket, you got a plastic seat, you're up near the lights, and you pay $20, $30 for a hot dog and popcorn. And so when I talk about institutional racism, I want you to think about having a VIP seat where you go in there and you don't have to pay anything. And so for our Caucasian counterparts, sometimes, and this is how I can equate that you are already indoctrinated in this institution. You don't even know, you don't have to pay anything. It's already been set for you because you automatically, based on your color of your skin, go to the VIP section where you have all access to everything. People of color, on the other hand, you have to go and pay for the nosebleed seats. And so even on the airplane, you got first class and then you got everything else. And so when I explain this to people, then they start to understand, well, if you know anything about first class, I don't ever want to go back to sitting in the plastic seats when I'm sitting in the skybox in the plush leather seats that recline, and you got everything at your fingertips. You just say it. And you know, and you know, my brother from another mother, Sterling Brunson, he experienced that with me. We had the mayor there just serving us and giving us all kinds of stuff. And this is how, for people of color, when you talk about institutional racism, and I have to say this, that if people don't do things to help address it, or if you don't say anything, then you're complicit. So I'm gonna stop there because I know we have some other wonderful panelists that and that I want to hear from. So thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Timothy Burgess. One, I always love the analogies that you give. And I would also share with you that many of the participants are writing in the chat that they love the analogy. So thanks for giving us that. And you talked about those VIP seats, but more importantly, what I heard you talk about was the historical perspective, right? The story. What is the story that we are telling? And so Dr. Slade Martin, I'm coming to you. I'm passing the mic to you because you are a historian. And not only are you a historian, but one of the words that you said during your description was that you value storytelling. So tell us about that in your research and in your work, specifically as it pertains to race and racism and relations.
Well, thank you so much, Tati. I am so fascinated. First, I want to say I just enjoyed the preacher. You know, I just enjoyed what Brother Bridges had to say, and that's telling part of our story. So, telling our story is critical that people understand who we are, our perspectives, and get a sense of the real grassroots on the ground happening. I think of two women that really, that I was really drawn to when I moved to Maryland about 30 years ago. One is Mrs. Betty J. McLeod. I don't know if anyone knows Mrs. Betty J. McLeod, but Miss McLeod was an educator, and she was fierce. She was fierce in that she insisted on allowing not just the grown-ups, but the children to tell their stories too. And so as we look at researchers going into communities, as we look at doing different types of work, community-based research and work, it's important that we listen. I would say that listening is much more important than talking. And so listening to people's stories, listening to people's perspectives. I worked in African American studies. I directed a research and resource center at George Mason. And one of the things I felt very strongly about and very passionate about was giving people the opportunities to tell their stories. And in listening to the stories, we see the real life impact of structural racism. We see how it affected people who were not afforded education, who were living in places because they were not allowed to, and they did not receive the benefits of the GI Bill or some of the government policies that were afforded to their white peers. And so hearing the stories is important so that we have a collective memory and we understand that what is happening in present is also informed by the past. And so we need to encourage people to tell stories. We need to encourage people to ask questions and to hear those perspectives.
Thank you so much. And thank you on ending specifically about encouragement. And, we have Mr. Rodney Miner, and I think that he's a huge encourager. Rodney, you have shared with me that you lead many initiatives and have been doing so as a manager over at Veterans in Transition for more than 5 years. But I think what's unique about your perspective, and you use the word survivor and champion and striver to describe yourself, is that you've had your own battles, so to speak, which have really laid the foundation for the work that you do at Veterans in Transition. And we know that June is National Black Family Cancer Awareness Week, and that you're in a lot of preparation for programming and initiatives. But tell us more about your work and really what is the impetus and the driving factor of what makes you that champion and that survivor and that striver.
Sure. First of all, Veterans in Transition, as was stated earlier, is a platform for the veteran community to share their story. And I'd like to preference it that the fact that I am not a veteran. A lot of folks tend to conclude that I am, but that story is the fact that I met a Marine and he and I became friends. And long story short, we started working on putting together a show, a television show that promoted the veteran community, whether you're a 4-star general or a sniper, if you will, who comes home, who's looking for an opportunity to reconnect with that mission. And so we just provided that platform, if you will, and various initiatives for those veterans to reconnect, if you will. Now, in the process of that, I discovered that this was actually an event in my life that the Lord had led me to, because I would not have chosen to be in this space not being a veteran. But long story short, when I discovered that I had prostate cancer, the first thing I did after my recovery was reached out to various veterans and who had different forms of cancer. And what we did was provided, again, a platform for them to share their story. And it was very rewarding, not just for me, but also for those veterans, because they had the opportunity to share and to get to tell their story, which was not being told. And so we put together what was called Cancer, a Veteran's Perspective, and it's been well received. And so we're actually in our 2nd year of that. And recently, last year, as a matter of fact, I was made aware of the War on Cancer Act, and it's going to be celebrated at the end of this year in December. And in January, I was made aware of, as you had referred to, Dr. Warren, the FDA's cancer, Black Family Cancer Awareness Week, which is June the 17th through the 23rd. And so we're gonna, again, put together an event for that initiative where we're bringing veterans with different forms of cancers to share their story. But getting to the point of being the striver, thriver, advocate, and champion part, I have to step back because it answers the why for me, all right? My baby sister transitioned in 1999 from lung and ovarian cancer. And so fast forward 15 years later, I'm interviewing a veteran, and she is sharing her miraculous story, how God healed her. And for the first time in my life as a cameraman, I cried behind the lens because I asked God, why did you favor her and not my sister? Of course, he didn't answer, right? He didn't answer at that moment, right? So once I moved into my space of cancer, right, the Lord basically showed me that my job, my responsibility, part of my purpose was to get the message out, right? Was to get the message out of how he works in and through his people. And so as a champion, my sister lives through the work that I do on these initiatives. And so we're just delighted to be a part of this. This is all new for me, being part of this community space, because only by the virtue of me having the prostate cancer, being that survivor advocate, am I here. And so I'm here to learn, to discover how I might be able to engage with the community leaders as you guys are, and to shed light on the issue in any way that I possibly can.
Thank you so much, Mr. Minor. One, that's a wonderful testimony, and thank you for your vulnerability and sharing your journey, but as well as the loss of your sister. And my sincere, of course, condolences for that, because I know that every year it probably changes and shapes you as the survivor and champion that you are. You spoke definitely about faith. And I appreciate that as a woman of God. And my prayer is that you will continue to explore, or God will continue to explore those answers to your questions, that story, that rich story that you're telling us, to get to the solutions that you will see, that you will touch many lives and transform many people. And you are a member of the community, sir. You are a member of the community. So we thank you for your leadership. And so in that, we serve here at the center, and the center, it's Hopkins Center for Health Disparities Solutions. And I love the fact that it ends in solutions, because I think that all of us who are tuned in today would say that regardless of the topic that we bring and the theme that we bring every year for our annual symposiums and our annual retreats, we all want to get to the same end, which is solutions, to be solution oriented for the community at large. And how we get there, that process in terms of how we get there, may look very different, right? It's looked different for you, Rodney. It's looked different for Miss Slade Martin, and of course you too, Mr. Bridges. And so in talking about solutions, I want to talk about what are the solutions. Like, Dr. Keith Norris said, I'm going back in my notes, but I think he said, what is the way, or what's the way forward? That's how we'll put it. So what's the way forward? So race, racism, and ratchetness, right? And we're talking, and we said researchers versus residents, because oftentimes it may feel like that, to be honest, as a member of the community. It may feel like, there are good things, researchers come in, academic institutions come in, and they want to help. They want to be transformative in the communities that we serve, or that they serve, rather. But sometimes community has felt, either left out of the conversation, not actively involved in and engaged in the process. There are different reasons, right? And so in talking about this researcher versus residents perspective, we want to definitely continue and shape the conversation. So I'm coming back to you, Dr. Phyllis. When I talked to you during our one-on-one, you shared some light on the informed consent process around research, and how just in the informed consent process of participants, community members participating in research, that there are some structural, or rather systemic and systematic race and racism issues in that process. So please share for us more about that, or share what you shared with me, but also highlight what are some solutions, because you also shared some solutions as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And one of the things I just wanted to emphasize is as we heard discussions about the social determinants of health, uh, as we heard the discussion about race versus racism, again, structural racism, health equity, health inequities, disparities, we know as researchers now know that we witnessed a 2020, the year 2020, that in which we saw blatant forms of racism. We saw the impact of the structural racism on Black and brown bodies. We saw that with COVID. We saw that with policing and injustices around policing. And so we know now, we know that we know. And so we can't continue as if we are uninformed. We cannot move forward as if we don't know. So we all need to embrace the fact that, okay, this is in plain sight now. Plain sight, no excuses. And I think as Dr. Norris said, we have an opportunity now to make a decision about how we're going to move forward. One of the things is we talk about, doing research in communities of colors, in Black and brown communities, is the importance of trust, the importance of listening, the importance of respect. And I think when we do the informed consent process, I know the anxiety that researchers feel about getting the form signed. Let's just get the form signed, right? But in that process, I think that's the place in which we really need to take a step back, take a deep breath, and allow first to construct a thoughtful, informed consent document, and then to allow potential respondents and participants to really think through and answer whatever questions they have. And so I think it's important that we use clear and plain language, that we can think kind of beyond what our immediate need and desire is to get the form signed so we can get the information. And so we need to go beyond that and think about all of the kind of things that were discussed today, and to think about trust and respect and honoring people who are giving of their time. And we need to ensure that even if it slows down the process, that questions are answered, that people really do understand, and that people have an opportunity to review these kind of documents.
Thank you so much for that. That trust and that respect piece. We've heard that it's almost like it's a recurring theme today, but it's a recurring theme in this body of work. And Tim Bridges, you have a really unique role, and I'm always fascinated. Similar to Dr. Denise Holtz, you too, Fayette Street Outreach, Miss Edna Mans Lake, Mr. Sterling, Mr. Andre, as well as you, really took me under the wing when I arrived in Baltimore, Maryland. And you challenged me, right? You challenged me not to just stay in my executive office and crunch my numbers. And, my role at the time was to help tell the story from a data perspective as an evaluator on what the community needs were. And you challenged me, but you also changed my frame to not see that community or your community at the time, because I feel like I am a part of that community, as a community of just needs, but you helped me to see it as a community from an assets lens, an assets-based view. And so talking about that trust and that respect and honoring that, and I know that I took you up on that challenge, but you have extended that invitation to many scholars and many stakeholders who desire to partner with you, but have not taken that journey, which is to walk in the community, to meet the people in the community that they hope to serve and partner with. So talk with us a bit about that trust, that respect, and honoring that legacy, please.
Yeah, so one of the things that for most part, if you got a fish bowl and you got fish in the bowl, and then you ever had a magnifying glass where you took the magnifying glass and you looked in the fish bowl at the fish? So that's what community, the relationship communities have with some research. Because again, it's about being able to connect. And I thank my pastor, Bishop Jonathan Wallace at Intercourt Ministries, for allowing me to show me the love that Jesus had. And so my mother modeling that, we've learned how to take care of our people through our families and engagement and loving our community. And so, one thing that I always say, researchers, and I'm so thankful that I sit with the fine Dr. Thorpe and Dr. Gaskins and Dr. Bowie on the CDAC. So this is the community person, and I'm on the community engagement and dissemination core. And, as a part of that, again, we've been always tasked to challenge. We have to fight for everything in our community. And so as a part, when I seen Dr. Tati sitting in the office and she's telling a story, I'm like, well, how can you tell a story from in the office? Or how can you go on Google and do the Google map and you start talking about how you walking down a virtual street and you're doing all this research at your desk. But I've been challenged with sitting there, and it's a wonderful people around the table with all this wonderful research that doesn't get back to the community. We have 16,000 vacant properties in Baltimore City. And that's what most people see is vacant properties and poverty and drugs and shooting and mental illness, and not even knowing that it's not normal to walk around and see rodents and vacant properties and all this stuff every day. And what happens is you start to get immune to it. So COVID doesn't even break through it. The ratchetness is that most of the people that we be talking about doing research on aren't even aware, don't even care, not even wearing a mask. They just out living, trying to eat, trying to get another, whatever they're trying to do. So it takes researchers have to come out of the office. You got to get a scout. You got to get somebody that you can go and connect you with people in the community so you can get some adequate information so that, people can get things that they need. My brother from another mother talked about his sister wanting to get a COVID shot, and the husband said, no, don't get the shot. And now you can get the shot. But we have to do a better job. And I thank Dr. Tati because, again, I wouldn't have never been invited to push at this table if not these folks. And I appreciate them. I appreciate them letting me come to the table and tell them about, some of the things. We're trying to do some work in West Baltimore, but I'm over here at Johns Hopkins and it's just internationally known. But when we try to apply for grants from Hopkins, they say it's only for East Baltimore. And so I'm challenged to say, well, if you're internationally known and you're getting all these millions of dollars, why isn't a couple of $1 million coming to Fair Street Outreach or Positive Youth Expressions or a Step Forward? I'm also the board chair of a Step Forward, a recovery program in Baltimore City that deals with people that are recovering addicts. And so when we're out and we're giving 2,000 meals during the summer of 2019 at our center, feeding our community, or giving them a catered meal for Thanksgiving, or giving them toys for Christmas, and giving them food and meeting the need. That's what engagement does. So for researchers, this is what you have to do is, again, you know, Dr. Tati is a consultant. You need to reach out to her, put her information there so she can help you bridge this gap. And that's what we need. Dr. Norris hit it so eloquently about how to move forward. We have to develop ways that we can reinvest in these people, because a lot of these people have lost hope. They don't get the CNN about COVID. They don't know what's going on. If you go up Pennsylvania Avenue, there's 100 people out there, ain't nobody got a mask on. Because COVID ain't there, it's secondary. So.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tim. You know, that is one, I heard an action call from you, and Dr. Gaskin also wrote something in the chat. So I hope that we can definitely, you know, make it happen in a safe way. And you're right. Like, it's so important for us to come out of our four walls, right? And really find out that if we say we are, you know, researchers or scholars or academic institutions that want to do community engaged work or community-based participatory research, or whatever term we like to use, right? That you need to be actionable. That is something that you have to work out, and it takes time.
And if you've been in the community as long as we have a track record. We could call ourselves the engagement specialists. I remember, and then Kendra can put Shaquila's 2 double masters. So this is a young girl, my best friend Yusef, his granddaughter. Every year we gave her school supplies. Every year she's got school supplies, books, and paper. This girl has a double major now. She's a double master's degree. They'll put a name up there. But from us giving her school supplies, you never know how you're going to impact somebody. She's in school now, getting 2 double majors. And so her father, Takuma, put a name up there and the 2 majors. But what I'm saying is that early on, if researchers can take this leap of faith and step outside the office and connect with people that can help direct you, we would make such an impact.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And when I did that, I saw the impact. You engagement specialist, you. I love that term. I love that term, engagement specialist. And just to put context, because I saw, again, I invited a partner, stakeholder, Mohammed, and he's tuning in from Saudi Arabia. So we have folks who's tuning in from the West Coast, from the East Coast, from all different time zones, right? And we appreciate and value everyone for being here. But to put it in context, in 2015, many of you may be very familiar with Freddie Gray's death, and where Freddie Gray grew up, as well as was detained, is less than a mile away from Fayette Street Outreach Organization. It's less than a mile away from Positive Youth Expressions. So it's in the same neighborhood, in the same footprint. To put that in perspective and put that in context, if you remember the unrest, if you remember the uproars, if you remember the rioting and the looting, that happened, of course, throughout the city of Baltimore. But we recognize that even in that approach, race and racism and ratchetness, that there were communities that were protected, right? The Inner Harbor, Hopkins was protected, but West Baltimore was not protected, right? The malls and different things like that. However, these key stakeholder organizations, the Fayette Street Outreach, the Positive Youth Expressions, the Bon Secours Community Works, they went untouched. They went untouched during this time because they are engagement specialists who really engage community members, who really are concerned about the work and things that are being done. There's so much brevity, and you talked about the storytelling, and I'm coming to you, Mr. Rodney Miner, because you are an executive producer. So you sit behind that camera and you have the luxury of telling stories. Let us know about how does that shape the work that you do, and what do you think our call to action should be in honoring the stories of our community leaders, members, and organizations?
Interesting. I think the first thing we need to do is really tell the story of the community leaders and what they're doing. And also, you know, I would love to be able to, in addition to telling their story, also, I'd love to be able to hear or to know who are the other minority doctors, if you will, or medical community leaders that are out there. And where I'm going with this is, in particular, as it relates to clinical trials, okay? And me personally, I think that's something that we all know the history, right? But we have to get past that, all right? I don't see, and my perspective is limited, a concerted effort and attempt within the African-American community to really educate, right? About the importance of our participation. I see scattered information. Now get me, there may be somewhere across the country, right? But I think it has to be consistent in order for us to get into the system. There has to be monies invested in that process of educating us so we get past the syphilis and all the negative aspect of it, right? And so those stories need to be told, and those efforts needs to be, we need to move in to make that happen. Some of the things that we're doing as it relates to men's health, because that's what I'm passionate about, is men's health, particularly prostate cancer, and in general, just men's health overall. I'm, along with a few other collaborators, we're working on an initiative to bring a different approach, if you will, to men's health. You know, there's nothing new under the sun, but we're going to try and use different incentives as opposed to, for me, for example, I attend a lot of meetings, as I'm sure you all do, but 45 minutes of PowerPoint presentation, it gets wearing on you, all right? And particularly men. So we're looking at ways to engage men differently, ways in which it's going to empower them, that's going to entertain them, that's going to educate them, and all within a span of about 45 minutes, right? We're just going to use a different bait in order for men to take a real interest in their health, right? And the health outcomes. And so this initiative is in the works, and you know, you'll be hearing a little more about it as we move forward. But overall, we need to tell the stories of those individuals that's doing the work.
Thank you so much, Mr. Miner. And if folks want to get in contact with you about the Men's Health Initiative, how did you already put your contact information in the chat already? Great. Great. I think that one, I see a lot of synergy, of course, with the Black Men's Health Study. You know, Dr. Roland Thorpe, as well as Dr. Gaskin, they are instrumental in that project. And when you shared with me, you know, the work that you were doing and your vision, I immediately thought, like, oh my gosh, what collaborations and what synergy and what magic, even though I don't believe in magic per se, but what magic could happen, right? And so I do want to give our audience members an opportunity, because the chat is jumping and I can't even keep up with the chat while trying to moderate this session. So if you do have questions or comments and you would like to chime in, I know we have roughly about 15 to 20 minutes before our session closes. And I know that we may have a few folks who may have a few questions. Dr. Norris, I would love for you to come into the conversation And I know that you weren't prepared for it, but I believe that you are a man who stays ready, so you don't have to get ready. So Dr. Norris, please chime in, share with us your perspective about what you've heard, what Mr. Rodney Minor, what Mr. Tim Bridges, and what Dr. Phyllis Slade Martin has shared, and also just how it ties back to race and racism while folks are getting their questions, please.
Sure. So I'll follow, I was smiling when Mr. Minor was talking about going out and talking about getting into clinical trials. So when I first got involved in community, that's what I did. It was called Loretta Jones, my community partner. It was 2 community partners, and we went to different meetings, and I did what's called Research 101. And I would talk about clinical trials and why people need to get in clinical trials. And then they would critique afterwards, like, nah, that's, that was too blasé. It was too, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, And so that was how I first got started doing that. And now one of our community faculty, she does the Research 101 talk now for community. But my goal was to, as you said, Mr. Meyer, to give people a different awareness and understanding of trials, because trials can range from anything from, you could be in a prevention trial, and on exercise and the role of exercise for preventing cancer and things of that nature. So there's a lot of different types of trials. Every trial doesn't have to be necessarily a medication trial. So that's important. I think the conversation around getting out into the community and walking and understanding is really critical. So we used to do, we had what we call photo voice, where we go to different communities and take pictures and talk to people. And all of our meetings are held, the majority of our meetings are held at the sites of our community partners. And we try to do as few as possible at the university, because it's just hard to come and park and get out there and all that other stuff. And when we do our conferences, we rotate different sites. So the sites rotate through different areas. So it's just exciting to hear the things you're talking about. And I think you're right on spot. It's really important. We need to get researchers who are committed to or interested in doing this work out into the community. We also have to understand, so it's not for everybody, right? So some people, it doesn't matter. You can have all the training in the world. It's just not going to happen, right? So some people do need to stay at the university. That's all there is to it, right? So we also have to acknowledge that as well.
Yes.
But some people get better over time and work and yeah. So those some initial come, but yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Norris. And that is the ratchetness of it, though. I agree that there are some people who do need to stay at the university. The challenge is when they don't realize they need to stay at the university, and they say they want to do community work, and they want to do it from the university seat. Those two do not go together, right? And in fact, it leaves the community feeling empty. It leaves the community oftentimes worse than when they started. It does not for sure leave them with anything that they could probably disseminate or be sustainable over time.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for that, Dr. Norris. Really appreciate that. And I love the work that you're doing and having that community faculty appointee. I think that other academic institutions and centers should definitely develop that kind of model, right? So, were you going to say something? I'm sorry.
I would say I think so, and I was going to say, and I agree. People have to understand. Like you said, it's important to understand having people go out and do bad stuff is actually puts things back, right? So it's not like, what do you have to lose? No, you have stuff to lose, right? So it's important that the university's thinking about who's going out there, And that's why it's important that there's some vetting and some linkage with community partners to actually make a determination whether or not this is even worthwhile.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. Thanks for that. I know we do have some questions. I do want to say this, that, Dr. Norris just talked about some of that vetting and, at Bon Secours Hospital healthcare system in Maryland, they try to make a lot of decisions always with the community in mind and also at the table. And so Fayette Street Outreach, Franklin Square, as well as Boyd Booth together created what they have their own advisory called the Anchor Group. And when it comes to even hiring staff persons at the healthcare system, they sat on the interview panel. And I thought that's something that was just, wonderful and definitely a different perspective. So does anyone have any questions for Tim Bridges, Rodney Minor, or Dr. Phyllis Slade Martin?
Well, Dr. Tatiana, I do. This is Dr. Folks. And first, I want to thank the panel for all of the information. Mr. Minor, I'm really going to get in contact with you. My brother-in-law just died in last March, from prostate cancer, and he didn't reach out to anyone or any programs or anything. So that information you have to offer is priceless. I want to thank Tim Bridges. When we first came into the community in 1999, this old warehouse, he reached out. He kept checking on me and my husband to see what we were going to do with this big old dirty warehouse. And he shared this story about me working in high school. And I didn't leave our students. Actually, I needed to know how to fill in those educational gaps. And the only way I could know that was to work with young people and understand the development of them in order to reach back out at our high school students. So that's why we have 8th graders now. But thank you, Dr. Tati. Thank you, Dr. Slater. Thank you all for all the information you've given us. This is my first time here, and I've enjoyed it. And thank you for inviting our children to do poetry. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Folks. Anyone else? We have about just 5 minutes before we allow our moderators. I mean, I'm the moderator. We allow our panelists to give their final remarks.
Dr. Tati, I just want to piggyback off the Dr. Folks. Actually, Dr. Folks, I just had a conversation with Brother Bridges. When was it, Tim? 2 days ago?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
About doing some prostate cancer work, educating and that kind of thing. So if we can connect, I've had the conversation with Tim, so if we can somehow manage to make the connection, certainly. Absolutely. As well as Brother Slade's right there. He's a part of the coalition, and he's I don't know what's the best term there. He is
everything, man.
Huh?
I'm the godfather of the group, and we certainly support that. I'm the godfather of the group. So
yeah, absolutely, godfather. Perfect name, Jimmy. And but certainly, I'm looking to have conversations with Brother Bridges there in terms of getting together. So we would love to nothing more than to have you involved. When we engage those conversations about that prostate, about the prostate health. Right.
Dr. Tati, I would like to add something.
Yes, please.
Hi. So I'm really grateful to be here, and also I love this panel. I love everything about, of course, Dr. Tati, Tim, but I want to just express how this gives me a lot of hope, seeing people who have had lived experiences and individuals like you, Dr. Tati, at the table to propose solutions, because I know you all are the real deal. So being one of the people that have grown up in these communities and having support from people like Fair Street Outreach and yourself, it's really be to watch this panel grow. And I really feel really great about what the solutions will look like, because they will be really, I feel like there'll be genuine solutions that are going to propose accurate solutions. So this is really, I'm really excited to be here and to see that this is the panel today.
So,
Oh, Miss Yassine, thank you for coming on. Miss Yassine, please tell them the organization.
Now, and Kenja was a little baby, maybe this big when I held her. So her father used to do sales. And so she grew up learning. And this is where researchers come in at. Dr. Folks is always talking about speaking positivity into these children. And my grandson was the young man that was in the middle. He's been there. My daughter carried him in there in the carrier. And he's been there ever since. But that research right there, that young lady right there, being able to breathe into her, Fair Street Outreach, that's our future. She has a daycare, and not just any kind of daycare. Her daycare is gonna fill in gaps. Tell them what your daycare is gonna fill in.
So I wasn't going to use this as a plug, but since you insist, I'll go ahead and take advantage of it. So we're going to leverage our trust, or we are leveraging our trust and relationships with parents to connect them to resources that allow them to thrive. So we're definitely more than daycare. We do a lot of the things that Dr. Folks mentioned, as I vicariously lived through her mentorship, watched all of the great things that she does in her program. But we're just on the other side of town. So you can go to our website to find out the rest, but we do a lot of leveraging our relationships to support families.
I love that. And it is so good to see you. I wish I could give you a hug. She makes me so proud, honestly. Again, I didn't know that you were tuning in for this conversation, so that's so awesome. But again, we heard, from all of our, members who are in the community, and we did not hear from any scholars, research scholars, to chime in and ask any questions or add any value. And we're right at just 5 minutes before this segment ends. And so I do want to, Dr. Janice Bowie and also Colonel Jimmy Slade, I have the pleasure of serving alongside of them as co-leads, again, for the Community Engagement Dissemination Corps, which is the advisory board that Tim Bridges also sits on. So Dr. Janice Bowie, if you have any remarks, and Colonel Jimmy Slade, if you have any remarks for 1 minute, and then I'll give the last 3 minutes to Tim Bridges, to Rodney Minor, as well as Dr. Slade Martin.
Thank you, Tati, and thank you, all of you who served on our panelists today. I also want to thank Dr. Norris, and it's been awesome. It's been exceptional. I've been very quiet because one of the recommendations was to listen. And so that's what I've been doing and taking it in. And I want to defer my few minutes to Dr. Londette Jones. Londetta has a question that she would like to ask. So I'm going to give my time to her.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Bowie. So yeah, I have so appreciated this presentation. I am actually an assistant professor at the University of Maryland School of Medicine, although I still call Johns Hopkins my home doing graduate school here. So it's always a pleasure to come back. What I had just really appreciated from listening to everyone was the authenticity of what you're saying. And so I was in the chat and I was looking at the comments about a walking tour. And one of the things I recognize in what I've been doing, just like Janice listening, is how about relationship? And so what I thought about, instead of just walking through, how about like meeting the organizations that you run where they are? So you mentioned a lot of volunteer activities. And so as researchers, how would we actually get informed about the different activities and just come by and participate in those activities to help your work move forward? And through that relationship and over time, as we grow, things can unfold. But I think it starts there, for me. But so I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Is that for me, Ms. Londette?
What's
Is that
that?
for me?
Oh, yeah. I'm staring at you on the screen. But
Okay. So for us, I think, one of the things that's really unique with me is that I take people to where I know it's a jewel. Everybody if anybody knows me, and I used to be the PTO president at Positive Youth Expressions where Dr. Folks is. If I meet you, the first thing I take you is right there. And I take you and introduce you to Dr. Folks, and then you look at, when you walk through the lobby, you're looking at African-American history, you're looking at information about you, what looks like you. So that's the first thing. And on that, we are always open to having people come in and help serve our people. Again, like I said, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We rely on donations, such as Dr. Folks and her program. And also, but as just our small group, we've been able to raise $350,000 for a playground. Had that redone in 2012. We raised over $750,000 for our community center, which is located at 29 North Smallwood. And we were able to do in 2019, feeding 2,000 families. All summer, we just fed them. And we have a urban farm. We use stuff from our farm. We had some chefs come out, and we did over 200 catered meals for Thanksgiving. And we're doing a giveaway at the end of this month for our community. So again, I just like to say, we're open. And I think my treasurer, Mr. Brunson, has put our information up there, our website, and we're getting ready to do a massive cleaning on the 24th. We're just a phone call away. And just like this whole synergy here, it's a way to help us connect. That's the main thing. If we don't do anything else, but figure out a way to connect. And then, in my mother's name, when she passed away of a stroke in 2013, I've been doing a musical we do a musical and the proceeds go to Dr. Folks' school. So we try to raise money to give the school for the students for art, music, and also the arena players. So if you want to help us and help our community, you can help by looking on that chat and send your tax-deductible donations to our programs. And then you definitely will be able to come out and help us meet our community, start to think about some new ways of doing research. So I know Dr. Tati has got, but yeah, look, that our information is in the chat.
Thank you so much. Everyone, please definitely mark your calendar for April 24th cleanup. April 24th, go out to the community and clean up. You can start there. It's like a relationship. Rodney Minor, I'm coming to you 1 minute for your final closing remarks. And thank you so much for that, Tim Bridges.
First of all, I would like to give a shout out to Brother Bridges for what he's doing in the community. And again, reiterate to encourage everyone to support him in any way that you can. I also like to encourage those who, if you haven't already read Heather McGee's new book, it's called Why Racism Costs Everyone and How We Can Prosper Together. It's her new book. I encourage you to read it. I'd like to thank everyone for this opportunity. As I stated, I am generally behind the camera and I am generally not up front like this, but I appreciate the opportunity. And I hope that I get an opportunity again to connect and to work with everyone that's on the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Minor, and I'm sure that there will definitely be a lot more opportunities. Dr. Phyllis Slade Martin, of course, our historian. So the stories, tell us your final thoughts.
Well, it's just been great today to, to hear the stories I think of my parents a lot when I hear some of the conversations that we've had and some of the presentations today. And my mother was a breast cancer survivor. Both my parents were survivors of cancer. Later, they did succumb to those cancers. So looking at our communities and the impact of health and access and equity related to health equity is so, heartfelt and important to me. And as we look at, some of the solutions that, I always encourage, I do try to myself and I encourage others to, that we always need to self-assess. We need to look at our values, our beliefs, our practices, and our personal commitment to a more equitable society. That may mean getting a little bit uncomfortable at times, but it's important that we recognize that we have individual and collective responsibilities. And so when we look at some of these amazing nonprofits like Brother Bridges, nonprofits like Brother Miners, like Community Ministry of Prince George's County, how can we take our appreciation to another level? How can we move beyond maybe making that small donation? How do we move beyond that and really look at impacting policy change, impacting change that deeply resonates with people? And so I think we need to recognize our biases and make some decisions about what direction we want to go in and how we want to, how researchers want to connect with residents in the communities. And building relationships is so much at the core of the work that is done and showing empathy, the work that is done in communities. I wanted to just read, I thought Amanda Gorman, who spoke at the inauguration, said some very profound words. And I just want to read a few sentences of her poem. She said, "When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms too as we free it, for there is always light. If only we're brave enough to see it. If only we're brave enough to be it." Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I love those words. And I often conclude my speaking segments with the same. And I'm asking everyone who's still tuned in to be brave, unmute yourself, make some noise, because that's how we do it in the community. Join me in congratulating and also thanking Dr. Phyllis Slade Martin, Tim Bridges, and Rodney Minor.
Nice job, nice job.
Good job, Dr. Warren.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, great job.
Can I get
Tim,
that 30, get a 30
Oh,
second?
Dr. Folks is still on. Please congratulate Dr. Folks as well. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome back. What an outstanding and awesome symposium we had to this point. First of all, I'd like to say this it gets better and better as we get throughout the symposium. I want to go ahead and get started. Thank you for hanging in there with us today. My name is Roland Thorpe, and I'm the director of the Investigative Development Corps with Dr. Keisha Pollock Porter. This is the portion of the program where we highlight some of our next leaders in health disparities research. We're so grateful for the National Institute on Minority Health and Health Disparities, who has funded the work that you'll hear about today from these next two scientists. The next presentation we'll hear from will be presenter is Dr. Jackie Boutrage. She's an assistant professor in the Division for Rehabilitation Psychology and Neuropsychology within the Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation in Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. Her research interests includes racial disparities and racial health disparities in multiple sclerosis populations. And today we'll be hearing some of her pilot work. Dr. Boutrage.
All right, so hi everyone, I'm excited to be here and to briefly share with you some of my preliminary findings in my study. And so Dr. Thorpe already kind of introduced me, so I'll move along to the next slide. So the acknowledgement slide, it came right before this one. Yeah, very, very quickly, I just wanted to acknowledge the center and say thank you for the support. My study would not have been possible without the support. Next slide. So the study overview, actually the problem on this page, the slide kind of describes why I'm so grateful for having the funding I have to be able to study this, because the field of MS has largely, I think, neglected to focus on some of these factors like social determinants of health that cause or that lead to the disparate outcomes in between specifically Black or African American patients and white patients with MS. So just a very brief introduction. So MS, multiple sclerosis, is among the most common causes of non-traumatic neurologic disability in the working age adult population in the US. And what makes it even more important to study this group of patients is that we previously had thought that it was about 400,000 people in the US that have MS, and more recent data shows that we're really underestimating it, and that rather it's probably up to 1 million by now, and the rate's just increasing. And it's also unknown what kinds of things cause it, although we hypothesize that there's a mix of environmental, biological, and genetic factors, and so I'll come back to some of those things. But the existing research, because we don't know exactly what causes MS, the research in MS has really followed the traditional method of the way that Dr. Norris really nicely described, but like they treat race as a very static variable, and rather like the disparities work that is done that shows that African Americans or Blacks have significantly worse disease progression, greater disability. Actually, a lot of it just looks at it in terms of neurologic differences. So how much worse is the physical functioning, or optic neuritis, like vision problems, a big thing in MS. And what are some of the genetic factors that might be contributing to this? And so when we get in the area of genetics, it just becomes so sensitive. And so as I came into this field of MS, I wanted to apply my health disparities lens into this field specifically because I realized how much it needs it. So my study, I'm looking at some of these modifiable factors that we know contribute to health disparities in other populations. Things like patient-provider communication, and how that might impact patient engagement. None of this is probably shocking. The other health disparities researchers have really paved the way for me to be able to do this work in MS, but the thing is that it has not been done. And when I proposed this idea at first, it was hard to kind of get the buy-in here. So anyways, I'm very thankful. So I recently started the study, actually the first part of the study, which I'm excited to share with you the findings. It's just the preliminary findings. So next slide, please. Okay, so I have two parts. This study includes part 1 and part 2, and then there's also two groups, group A and group B. So group A are all the patients at Johns Hopkins who are Black or African American or white and have a diagnosis of MS. So we think about this population, they have access to my chart. So we know that they have access to the internet, right? Like that's kind of a biased population in itself. And the fact that these patients come to Hopkins for some of their MS care. And so that's the piece that I'm working on and I've made progress on so far. The other group B, I actually talked about at the Community Engagement Dissemination Core last meeting, is how I can recruit community members. So I wanted to really make sure that the community members who might be impacted by this condition are represented, because they have largely been underrepresented in MS research, and rather what we see is patients who are part of like this registry or medical electronic system. And so, and then the part 2 is where my mixed methods comes in. And so just to be able to capture some of these disparities, these causes of disparities and experiences of people who have been under-recognized in the research, we can't use these traditional methods that we need to, and I see the mixed methods way is like the best way to be able to capture it, because you can actually hear their voices and understand what's going on. Oh, next slide. So this is kind of small. So if you actually want to go to the next slide as well, I wanted to just show kind of the flow chart of what my study process looks like. So this is where I'm at. I meant to circle that entire thing, but for group A, we have gotten to the point where we've recruited people through my chart, and we've had actually, like, since I created this, we've had maybe about 30 more people respond to the study request, which is great. I just don't have much of the data to tell you about, unfortunately. So let's go to the next one. And then we can skip this one for the purpose of time, but so next slide. Okay, so current status. So it's in data collection. So like I said, we already have more than 104 participants in data in REDCap. So I wanted to also talk about like the MyChart recruitment committee and how actually like very helpful this has been in recruiting individuals who we have not been able to recruit in MS research. So I wanted an equal representation of both racial groups in this study. And so I worked with the MyChart committee, which at Johns Hopkins is the committee in charge of recruiting patients through using MyChart messages, to contact patients, starting with the Black or African American group first. I wanted to make sure and see like how many participants can we actually get, and then contact an equivalent number of white patients. Because again, a lot of times this is not how it's done. I wanted to really try to equalize the sample. And what was really great to hear is that from the committee, they said something like we had a response rate of 22% from the Black or African American population, which is phenomenal, or something. They used some kind of word like that, and I thought that was kind of surprising, and not surprising in another sense. But to hear that that the response rate that I thought was okay to them was really, really good. And so that tells me that I wonder how many of these MS patients like are even getting word about studies that look at racial disparities and social factors that contribute to these disparities in this population. And Although this wasn't the major focus of my study, as I looked further into the mixed methods survey that is also administered through REDCap, mixed methods being like I included lots of quantitative like Likert scale items, as well as really open-ended free text items too. So if people can't participate in that second qualitative, the interview piece, I could still get some open-ended data from them through the REDCap survey. And I saw lots of comments about, thank you for doing work in this area. I appreciate you wanting to learn about our experience. And so again, that like really captures, I think, just the traditional focus of the MS field and the things it has focused on. But so just very quick preliminary findings. You could go to the next one. So as I said, proportional racial group sizes, that's been really great and a pleasant surprise to the committee. And again, similar trends in the data that we've already seen, you know, like I asked questions about the disability and functioning, and so it was the case that Black and African American patients I only did counts, by the way, descriptive counts of these data. And so Black and African American patients did report greater disability, greater disease progression. And also what we expected, Black and African Americans with MS reported greater experiences of discrimination, experiences in the healthcare setting that were negative. And this wasn't as common for participants, white patients with MS. Another thing we also found, I'm sorry this isn't written, I sent in this PowerPoint before I could look at the data. One other thing we found, which is just really important in MS, is the major treatment that's used in MS is the disease modifying therapies. These are essentially the medications used for MS. And lots of these have not been studied in many other populations, but white patients. And so it was really interesting. The data showed that all the white participants thus far had actually been on a previous DMT and a current DMT, whereas if you looked at the sample of Black or African American patients, they indicated they were not on anything or maybe haven't in the past, and that they would prefer other methods of treatment. And it really speaks to these medicines create, in my clinical work, patients have talked to me about how much bad side effects or how much they're not working, and just lots of things that are not addressed in the field. And so anyway, so we'll move on to the next slide. And I'll finish here just with a couple of quotes from some of the data that I looked at, and then we'll end. But so part of some of the open-ended questions I asked was about what has your experience been like with healthcare, and also like how many healthcare providers have you had to see before you were actually diagnosed with your MS? So someone responded, at this time, an MS neurologist and physical therapist are the most important healthcare providers. I began seeing this doctor 9/2020 after 5 years, and 3 neurologists being unable to diagnose my MS within 15 minutes. Within 15 minutes of meeting with my current MS neurologist, he immediately diagnosed me. To say I was relieved and devastated is an understatement, because this delayed diagnosis was more years for the disease to progress untreated. So and this phenomenon is just far too commonly seen in MS in general, because of how various the symptoms of MS are, but more so in the Black or African American population, because the MS is always thought to be like a traditionally white or even a white woman's disease. So if we could go to the next and last slide. So I just thought this was also interesting. I asked about what was the environment, or like how friendly was your provider, or how friendly was the front desk staff, to see if they're, you know, what these experiences were like. And this woman replied, the front of the doctor's office usually needs for you to bring a bouquet of flowers to get pleasant acknowledgement. The doctors are too busy to be aware of their front office. By the time the physician comes into the exam room, you never even discuss the staff. And so this was said in the context of like, how important is, the environment in your healthcare provider's clinic with respect to where you want to get care or whether you'll return for treatment. And so these are just some preliminary data that I have found, and I look forward to being able to look more at the data that has come. If you could go to the next slide. So we'll do some more test retests, sending out of surveys, and then move on to the Group B community member recruitment. And so it'll be very interesting to compare kind of the two groups, the my chart and the versus like the community members. Sometimes there's there's overlap there as well. So maybe at the next retreat, I can share more data, but for now, that is all I have. If you could go to the last slide, please. I don't know how much time we have for questions or comments, but
So
I left my email.
yeah, thanks so much. So we are running short on time for questions. So we would ask that if you have any questions for either of the speakers to put them in the chat box. But we do have time. We'll take 2 minutes for questions to across both of the speakers.
I just want to chime in. This is Dr. Tati. I'm
Yes.
happy. I am just delighted. Both of the presentations were great, but Dr. Jackie, she came, did her presentation for the retreat, then followed up with the CDEC. And at the time, she had not started collecting any data or doing implementation. And I'm just so happy to see where your work is at currently, Dr. Jackie, and also where it's going. So congratulations.
Thank you. And thank you for all the support and input from the community core. Yeah.
All right, so let us move to the next portion of our presentation. So now I'd like to turn it over to Michelle Spencer, who is the excuse me, who is the Associate Chair for Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity in the Schools Department of Health Policy and Management, and a member of the Community Core here in the center to moderate the research lightning talks, which are a brief 5-minute research presentation. Ms. Spencer.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Thorpe, and good afternoon. Today has truly been incredible. It's been engaging from our opening remarks from our center director to Dr. Norris, and thinking about ways of doing the work differently with a framing of race-conscious approaches, to our positive youth expression poets, to our panelists who talked about emphasizing community presence at the table, and then hearing just most recently from our scholars. It has indeed been a great afternoon. And we are concluding our symposium with 2 dynamic lightning talks. Each presenter, as Dr. Thorpe just noted, will have 5 minutes to present. And our first lightning talk will come from Jessica Salas Brooks. Jessica is an MPH candidate here at the School of Public Health. Jessica is concentrating in epidemiological and biostatistical methods for public health and clinical research, with an interest in racial disparities in maternal and child health. Jessica's presentation will be on examining racial disparities in adverse birth outcomes using PRAMs. Jessica?
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I'm so glad to be here amongst such amazing scholars. I look forward to learning more through your work as well. Today, I just wanted to talk about my journey with respect to my research interest and my work in progress with my capstone project. So I wanted to begin with this image of a young mother looking off into the distance, preparing for the birth of her child, getting the nursery together, getting the baby shower together. It's an exciting time for many, right? Well, this young woman is me a few years ago, not now. And I have to say this experience really fueled my heart's desire to learn more about a startling statistic, which is that, next slide. Compared to other women, the preterm birth rate among Black women is 50% higher. And it left me wondering, just like many others, next slide, why do such racial disparities exist? And the answer, of course, is quite complex, which you all have spent, today discussing. And you can go to the next slide. My curiosity really led me to learn about the life course perspective and understanding that what happens before you are even born, whether you're in the womb, in childhood and adolescence and adulthood, can really shape your health in positive and harmful ways. But being that I'm in an 11-month program at Hopkins, I decided to focus a little bit. Right. So one area that I'm really interested in is the next slide, which is racial discrimination and how that can really shape adverse birth outcomes, learning about weathering chronic exposure to psychosocial stressors and aging in the body and structural and interpersonal racism, given the shifting national conversation regarding racism as a public health issue, I decided to spend my time really examining this further. In understanding the life course perspective, I decided to work with the next slide, the pregnancy risk assessment monitoring system, which is a population-based surveillance system, a partnership between the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and state health departments. It's really a comprehensive survey examining or asking mothers about their experiences before, during, and after pregnancy, and asking about the health of their children as well. And there was one specific question that really caught my attention, which is that during the 12 months before your new baby was born, did you feel emotionally upset, angry, sad, frustrated as a result of how you were treated based on your race, yes or no? There were about 14 states that used this question, including Georgia, North Carolina, New York, and South Carolina. So for my research, I examined the association between this question, which captured race bias, right, and its association with preterm birth outcomes. You can go to the next slide, please. So I focused on the experiences of Black women in particular, and Black women comprise about 15% of the total sample. And this is weighted, by the way, it's a huge number, but it's weighted there. So some quick descriptive statistics: about 55% of the women were between the ages of 20 to 29. A little more than half had more than a high school education. About 70% were unmarried. And if you could go to the next slide, please. So I conducted a logistic regression and I looked at a number of variables, right? I looked at race bias, which was not significant. It was 1.00 odds ratio. Unfortunately, I looked at smoking, maternal age, education, and there are a number of other variables that I'm interested in as well. I'm not done yet. But what we can see here is that the odds of experiencing a preterm birth was higher for women who smoked 3 months prior to conceiving compared to those who did not, and higher for those who were 40 years old compared to those who were under the age of 20. But these are known risk factors. But as I said, I'm not done yet. And so there's a lot more work to do. If you could go to the next slide, please. So my next steps, I'm really interested in the role of other stressors, the role of depression, additional covariates, in addition to what I've examined thus far, such as BMI, income, insurance coverage, and really being more specific about how I define adverse birth outcomes. What about very preterm births or low birth weight? But that's where I am right now. I'm looking forward to wrapping this up this 4th term, and thank you all for your attention.
And thank you, Jessica. We are going to hear from our second lightning talk candidate, and we will come back for any questions for you, but I appreciate your presentation. So now we're going to hear from Paris Lowe. Paris is an MS-PH candidate in the Department of Population, Family, and Reproductive Health. Paris is concentrating in maternal and child health with a research interest in Black maternal health and breastfeeding education. Paris's presentation this afternoon will be on experiences of racism in prenatal home visiting services, a qualitative analysis. Paris?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today. I am so excited to share this with you. So I would first like to begin by saying that I'm presenting a qualitative study, which is interesting, about the experiences of racism in prenatal home visiting services. slide. Sorry, next slide. I would like to acknowledge quickly that the work reported here today is supported by HRSA and the Pritzker Family Foundation. Next slide. And you might be thinking, what is home visiting? So according to the National Home Visiting Resource Center, home visiting is defined as a service delivery strategy that matches expectant parents and parents of young children with a designated support person, with the ultimate goal of promoting good birth outcomes and healthy development. And also, why does this study matter? Well, in the past year alone, we know that there's been a demonstration on a wide scale that systemic racism is a public health crisis, and it contributes to the many health disparities impacting communities of color today. However, the home visiting literature has yet to explore ways of addressing systemic racism, and this study is intended to be the first step in closing that gap in the literature. Next slide. This secondary analysis that I conducted is a part of a larger parent study focused on moving toward precision and prenatal home visiting in order to broaden and strengthen effectiveness in achieving good birth outcomes. And this is done through 4 perspectives, looking at evidence-based home visiting models, local programs, the home visiting literature, and lastly, through the perspective of family voice. And here I want to note that the term pregnant people is to be inclusive of all of our participants, and to note that in this study, they do represent the family voice. Next slide. So this secondary analysis was done using a subset of questions from a larger interview guide that were related to racism and racial concordance. There were 3 main purposes: hear about the conversations that participants have with their home visitors about experiences of racism and discrimination, identify whether they feel treated differently, and lastly, whether they have any preferences for racial concordance with their home visitors. Next slide. And we did have 21 participants from these 4 evidence-based home visiting models. And to be eligible, they needed to be at least 20 weeks pregnant, self-identify as non-Hispanic Black, Native American, or Hispanic and Latinx, and also have experienced a risk factor related to poor birth outcomes during their current pregnancy. I do want to note that this was a subset of the full sample of interview participants and only focused on the participants of color. And our non-Hispanic Black participants were the largest percentage of the sample, with them being 48%. Next slide. All participants had a one-on-one semi-structured phone or Zoom interview lasting about an hour, and also were remunerated $50 gift cards for their time. Next slide. So here are the 4 codes that I use for my deductive content analysis approach: conversations related to racism and discrimination, differential treatment, preferences for concordance, and lastly, some codes related to communication from the home visitor. Next slide. As you can see, we had 3 major findings. First, most participants reported no conversations with their home visitors about racism. And the few that did share personal experiences of racism did all identify as Native American and indicated positive feelings after sharing. One participant says, "She just tried to talk me through it. I felt like I was able to talk to her and get my frustrations and my emotions out without having to worry about her judging." Our second finding is that no participants reported feeling feeling treated differently by their home visitors, and this was a surprising finding. And lastly, most participants reported no preference for racial concordance with their home visitors. However, some did express a preference for racial concordance with their medical providers. One participant who identified as non-Hispanic Black says, "As far as the home visitor, I feel like she doesn't have that much control over me, or she doesn't have any control over my personal care. So I don't care. I don't mind what her race is. The people that have direct contact with me or direct care to provide, I do with my ethnicity." Next slide. There are 2 limitations that I will acknowledge. And the first is that this is a secondary analysis of interview data that had limited probing questions related to questions about racism and racial concordance. This does mean that the answers might have been different if interviewers had a chance to dig a little bit deeper into participant responses to our original questions on the interview guide. And the second is that this is a small, convenient sample, given that all participants were referred by their home visitors themselves. And this may mean that our sample is more biased than having home visiting clients who have more positive relationships with their home visitors than negative. Nonetheless, we can still draw some conclusions and implications from this study. And one is that pregnant people of color may have different experiences with healthcare providers than home visitors regarding racism and discrimination. And two is that future research should explore the aspects of respectful care delivery that home visitors provide and ask how prenatal care providers can use these aspects to improve their care delivery. And I just want to acknowledge my larger team at Johns Hopkins and the Home Visiting Applied Research Collaborative, as well as the home visiting models and families that participated in this study. Thank you for attending. I look forward to your questions.
Yeah. So thank you, Paris, and thank you so very much, Jessica. Because of the time, we won't have time for questions, but I would ask and encourage those of you who are listening to please feel free to email Jessica and Paris any questions that you may have. Certainly you will see from their presentations, and you've heard from their presentations, race and racism, social determinants of health, and also the ACEs that was discussed earlier today. And it's so critically important when we think of this symposium, all that we've heard and all that we've learned, to see these two scholars being able to represent their work, thinking about maternal child health and thinking about PRAMs in the work that they're doing. So thank you both, to you, Jessica, and also to you, Paris. We certainly appreciate all of your efforts and your scholarship. Before I turn it over to Dr. Gaskins for closing remarks, I would like to direct your attention to the symposium poll that has just come up on your screen. We want to encourage you to please complete the poll. We really appreciate your feedback, as it will help us guide future programming. Thank you for today, and Dr. Gaskins, over to you.
And thank you, Michelle. And I want to just thank our young scholars for their presentations, both the pilot awardees, as well as our students who did the lightning talks. In tradition, we say the best for last, and we hope that you have found that these bright stars who are rising and doing great work truly represent the best that we have to offer. I know that we're in overtime, and I could thank everybody who participated, but I just want to single out one person. I want to thank Will for his participation, and I'll use him as a so-called point of contact. And everybody else, as I say, thank you, Will, for just doing such a great job. You accept that as your appreciation for the job that you all are doing. We hope that next year when we do this, that we will be doing it as a hybrid, in person as well as online. I was really pleased with all the people who participated, both in this time zone and in the time zones beyond the East Coast. And so we're going to make sure that you're able to participate. So thank you for coming and sharing with us in this very, very, very important issue. So having said that, I think I've given you enough time. Please do not leave without completing the symposium poll. Please do not leave without completing it, because it is just so important, and really will be an interest to us, because we use this information to improve our program. And I'm just waiting for Chantel to put me on the spotlight, because I'm not Michelle, but nonetheless, we do appreciate what you all are doing. Oh, there I am. Right. So now, again, thank you very much, and please have a great day. We're five minutes over, but it was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful 5 minutes to go over. So if you have any comments for any of our presenters, please reach out to them and let them know of your interest in their program and their research. And stay tuned for our community walks. I think we're really going to try to pick that ball up and run with it.